The Discovery, Chapter 20, Epilogue. David walked along the open field next to Midnight's house with a happy smile on his face. The warm summer sunlight glistened off of his coat, and his chocolate-brown eyes squinted as he looked over the horizon. Clouds hovering just below the cliffside again made the view look like one borrowed from heaven itself. It was fitting, really. One hoof after the other, David walked, not a worry in the world. At his side was Midnight, a serene smile gracing her features as they made their way to the edge of the cliff. A gentle breeze blew over their coats, slightly bristling their fur as they moved. Birds happily chirped away in a nearby tree as they watched the two ponies. Eventually, David arrived at his goal, a large section of the escape pod. It had been expertly removed and inscribed with 3 very familiar names. Above each name was a heavily stylized picture of each human, drawn to look as close to the real person as possible. Richie Villavoy, Isaac Clarke, and Roman Doss. Here lies what remains of the 3 humans who gave their lives so that one could live. Though they may be gone, their spirits will live on. Only our regret as a species is that we did not have the chance to meet them, to learn from them and befriend them. Should humanity find its way to our world, know that you are welcome here. And know that the lone survivor of this devastating crash lived the rest of his days in peace and harmony, as our guest and as our friend. Princess Celestia, first of her name, Princess of the Sun. David read the inscription again before gently placing a hoof against the pod wall. Despite his good attitude on the way over, he couldn't help the sadness that welled in his heart upon reading the words. Midnight quickly approached his side and nuzzled his chin with her cheek, earning a weak smile from the crimson Pegasus. She pulled away after a moment and read the inscription herself. Within a few moments, she raised an eyebrow and turned to David.
Why isn't your name on there? It talks about you, but it doesn't list you by name.
Midnight wondered. I asked Tia not to put me on here until I die. It just doesn't quite feel right, you know? I feel like I haven't earned my name on there yet. David mused.
David...
Midnight said with a frown. I know. Maybe in a few years I'll change my mind, but right now, though, I think it's perfect just the way it is.
You know you did everything you could, right?
David thought over her question for a few moments before he responded. Yeah.
Alright, just making sure. I love you.
Midnight said, punctuating her sentence with a small kiss on David's cheek. Thanks, Mid. I love you too. Hard to believe it's almost been a year already, David replied.
Well, time flies when you're having fun. Or in your case, almost dying. A bunch. Really, you need to stop doing that.
Midnight said with a playful smile. Now how would I keep you busy if I did that? David asked with a raised eyebrow. Midnight simply giggled in response. David took the moment to lean over and nuzzle his cheek against her neck, earning a happy sigh from the graphite mare. After a moment, Midnight leaned down and planted a kiss on David's muzzle, making him smile in appreciation. You know, if humanity ever does come here, they're gonna have to change into ponies to live here. Or at least figure out a way to prevent their brains from being destroyed by magic. David thought aloud.
Well, I'd say that if we're able to warn them soon enough, they'd figure something out. Or at least the princesses would. Twilight wrote an entire medical book on you, and the effects magic had on your body during your first 6 months here.
Midnight responded. Oh, I remember. She was so excited about getting it into the Royal Archives. Either way, I do hope they come here one day. Maybe set up a little settlement somewhere and help Equestria advance. Maybe one day ponies could be landing on another planet and setting up a colony of their own. David mused.
Maybe one day.
Midnight replied, her head trained skyward. Would you mind if I said a few words to them? David asked, a slight hint of trepidation in his voice.
Go ahead, big guy. I'll be right over here.
Midnight replied, as she gave David some space. David turned back to the monument and walked over to it. He kneeled down until he was resting on his belly before he found his voice. Hey, guys. I know this isn't really where your bodies are or anything, but, I think this was the best that we could do. I think you can hear me. At least that's what I keep telling myself. Anyways, I'm rambling now. The point is, I never forgot what you said to me that day when I transformed. I don't think I ever will. David took a few minutes to steady his breathing before he continued. I asked Tia to help build this for you guys, David said, looking over the monument. I hope you guys like it. It's, I think it's pretty cool, and the engraving looks good. I tried my best to get the pictures to look right, but I don't know, I don't think I got your eyes right, Isaac. I keep forgetting if they were blue or green. David fell silent for a few moments. He seemed to visually shudder before a tear hit the grass. I can't remember too much of the first 6 months here. Too much brain damage. Don't worry though, Tia and Twilight have worked their asses off to fix me, and I shouldn't have any major issues for the rest of my life. I just can't get those memories back. Anyways, I just wanted to say that I'm doing well, and I hope you guys are too. I really miss you guys. David trailed off. David hung his head and fell silent. There was quiet for a while until the sound of hooves on grass grew louder to his ears. David slightly lifted his head to the side just as Midnight laid down next to him. She affectionately nuzzled her cheek against his for a few moments before planting a loving kiss on his cheek. When he turns to look at her, tears were still streaming from his eyes, but he found a supportive smile looking back at him. David offered his own weak smile in return, and leaned his head on Midnight's wither for support. They sat like that for a few minutes, both just content to being there, together, before David finally felt it was time to leave. He slowly lifted himself from Midnight and to his hooves. Midnight was quick to join him, and with a shared empathetic smile, they began the slow walk back to their house.
You okay, big guy?
Midnight asked.
Yeah, I'm alright. Thanks, Mid. I love you.
David replied.
I love you too, big guy.
Midnight said with a loving nuzzle.
So, what do you want to do now? I remember you said something about the beach, right?
She asked. Yeah, you were gonna teach me how to swim. David responded, looking somewhat distracted.
Right. You sure you're okay? You look like you've got something on your mind.
Midnight pressed.
Well, it's kinda random, but I've been thinking a lot about a pony name ever since Storm mentioned it.
David replied.
Oh, yeah, what were you thinking? Maybe something simple? My code is red, but red something just doesn't have a ring to it. Maybe crimson? David wondered. His tongue stuck out in thought. Maybe?
Midnight replied.
Oh, well, I am a Pegasus, so maybe Crimson Wing. Or Crimson Streak? Maybe Crimson Sky.
David continued to wonder.
Oh, Crimson Sky does sound nice.
Midnight responded.
Yeah, and instead of the whole name, I could just go by Sky. That sounds cool. I always like that name.
David happily explained.
Whatever makes you happy, big guy. I'm fine either way. I'll have to think about it, but I definitely think we're onto something here. Anyways, was there something in particular that you wanted to do, Mid?
David asked.
Well...
Midnight trailed off with a blush.
Well... Come on, Mid, spill it.
David said with a teasing grin.
Well, since you are Pegasus now...
Midnight trailed off again. David leaned forward, his ears perked up and ready to listen.
And since my Esther cycle is coming up in a couple of weeks...
David slowly began to understand.
We might need to discuss the possibility of having a full...
Midnight finished with a weak smile. David's mouth formed a small O as Midnight finished. After a few seconds to let the idea sift through his brain, David shook his head and leaned over to Midnight. He draped a wing around her wither and hugged her close. Their lips met in a loving kiss, and upon pulling away, David spoke.
I think we can talk about that.
Well, we're finally at the end. Now, it's not the end of the whole story. There's still a lot of epilogues to go through, but I don't think I'm gonna be able to read those. Because, I'll be honest, man, it's pretty lengthy when you take a look at the word count. Anywho, let's get on to our survivors of donators. Top donators: Jessie Smith, Zarsex30, BadassWaffle, Only One Thing, Ceru, Orion, and Caladis. Matchvic, Jock, Rayden, Runescythe, Will, Twinkie, Luigi, Chancellor, Crust, Big Smoke, Murder Princess, Loto Mighty, Solar Symphony, and many more awesome people. Thank you all so much for watching this video and live life to the fullest.